Hello, brovs. We're back with The Wandering Heir, a Christmas story by Charles Reade. I believe this is chapter 6, second part. Now heaven forbid, where is thy hurt? All over me. I made a great mistake. I kept beating him about his bullet head, but he still belabored my ribs. Oh, I am all pains and aches. It hurts me, e'en to speak. Alas, alas, said Philip, and laid a cool, consoling hand on the hot brow. Then he suddenly ground his teeth and said, Curses on them all. I will end this tonight, no later. James asked him what he meant. He refused to say, but the fact is, he was resolved to go to that very night to McCarthy, who was then on a visit to his brother 5 miles off, and tell him the whole story. Knowing that James would remonstrate, he kept his resolution to himself and went off for the present to prepare a composing draft for his patient. After the receipt of patience Surefoot, he made the decoction, in which I believe the flowers of the lime tree were a principal ingredient, and while it was simmering, he took up the Philadelphia Post that had just been brought into the office. He always read every line of that journal. It was a single quarto sheet and came out twice a week. That journal contained an advertisement that set the paper shaking in Philip's hand and his eyes glowing. I, Jonas Hanway, now lying in jail, charged with the murder of my ward, Joanna Philippa Chester, take this way to let her know my evil plight, and beg her, for pity's sake, to come back or write of her welfare. Poor Silas, that made the mischief, is in his grave, and naught awaits her hero but my true repentance and the kind affection of my co-trustee, Mr. Thomas Chester, under whose care she now is, if only she could be found. And for a further inducement to return, I do now, with my co-trustee's consent, inform her that she is heiress to a fortune of £13,000 or more, which knowledge was withheld from her by her father's express desire, lest any man should wed her for her dower, and not for true love of her. But now 'tis thought best to let her know the truth, lest she throw herself away. That said, Joanna is now 19 years of age, tall and active, and of singular beauty, hath eyebrows black as jet, and do meet so remarkably as, in an Englishwoman, must needs draw notice. She hath been traced to London, and it is thought she hath crossed the seas. Whoever will give information respecting her shall receive a reward of 500 guineas. She had her mother's jewels with her, but they are now her own. From my prison at Staines, January 1739 to 40. Advertisement. It was a cry from a prison, and a cry from home that knocked at her very heart. She uttered a responsive cry herself, as if the prisoner's cry had sounded in her ears, and then she devoured the words once more, feeding on every syllable in great amazement. But presently the letters grew hazy. Her filling eyes saw them no more, and in their place came the pleasant meads of Colebrook, the English landscape, humble but sweet, the grey old church, the parson's scholarly face, the white-headed children, and poor old England stretching out her hands to her lost daughter with words of sorrow and love. Then her heart gushed to her eyes in a stream, and the wanderer lay softly back in her chair, quite motionless, and let the sweet tears flow. Then came the desire to act, to fly home and save that poor bereaved father, and live amongst her folk. How should she manage it? She had jewels secreted about her, any one of which was worth more than a slave's ransom. Why not go to McCarthy, tell him who she was, and offer him a diamond ring for her liberty? Why not? Because he might have her seized for wearing man's clothes and throw her into prison for life. So severe was this colony in that matter. No, she could not endure the shame, nor run the risk. she would take one of his horses and ride by night to Philadelphia, and make terms with him through some other party. One thing alone she did resolve, not to lose an hour, but to be gone that very night. One day lost, and the prisoner's life might pay for it. Yes, she would go and take James Annesley with her. She took up the sleeping draught and went to his room. She made him drink it, and then covered him up warm, and took his hand in hers. James, dear, said she, I am a happy creature. I have news from England. Sad news, after a manner, yet sweet, and I am going home. Going? Ah, well, God's blessing and mine go with thee. Why, thou foolish man, I go not without thee. This very night we ride to Philadelphia, and thence to England. James shook his head sorrowfully. There is no escape for a slave. I have tried it. All alone, and on foot, without money or means. But 'tis different now. I shall command the expedition. I, who, by your leave, possess the two capital gifts of a commander, which are forecast and courage. Forecast, by which I do foresee all possible accidents, and provide for them, and courage, whereby I overcome and trample underfoot those petty dangers that scare a mere ordinary man like thee. What's this? What is what? I smell a smell I never could abide. 'Tis a cat. I know 'tis a cat. There she is. Coiled in the mouth of that sack. I shall faint. I shall die. Why, here's a coil about poor puss. 'Tis the stable cat, and loves to come here. Well, she goes forth, or I. Open the door, then, and fling thy cap at the poor harmless thing. I call not foul things harmless, especially when they are all claws. I like not your cats, even when they are called Christina's. While Philip was driving out the harmless necessary cat, James criticized him. Why, 'tis like a girl to be afeard of a cat, but indeed you are more like a girl than a boy in many things. You hate women more than is natural, and you turn your toes out in walking, and you carry your hand so oddly when you walk. Mercy on us, how? Why, you turn it out sideways and show the fingers. I walk with my thumb straight down. Philip turned very red, but said pertly, all which proves that I was born of a woman. Now you were born of a goose. I'm man enough to be your master, and this very evening you shall ride with me to Philadelphia. You are my master, and I own it, said James. My master, my superior, learning, wit, and daring. Only the courage comes and goes most strangely. But, good, my master, for all that I cannot ride with thee tonight. Oh, say not so, James. Why not? I could not sit a horse for my life. Alas, how unfortunate we are, James. Think me not unkind, but I must go tonight, with thee or without thee. You must go without me, then, for indeed I am not able. But perhaps you may be by nightfall. Have a good sweat and a good sleep, and I'll come again at dusk, for, oh, James, I must go, and I am loath to leave thee. Then Philippa retired and went and made some slight, and I'm pretty shocked that I didn't figure out that Philip was Philippa. Then Philippa retired and went and made some slight preparation for the journey she had resolved to take, but in the midst of it all, her hands fell helpless, and her heart revealed itself to her. She could not go. Love burst through all self-deception at last. She loved him, had loved him long, and now loved him to distraction. Leave him on his sick bed and among enemies? No, not for a day. She had honestly intended, if he could not come, to fly to Philadelphia, sell her jewels, and buy him of McCarthy. But now it came to the point, she burst out crying, and found she could not leave him in trouble. No, not for an hour. Nay, said she to herself, but I will come at night, and hector him, and taunt him, and coax him, and try all my wicked arts to get him to go with me. Then, if he cannot, I will pretend to go without him, but I'll slip back softly, and lie on the mat at my darling's door. None shall come to hurt him, but over my body. Meantime, James received another unexpected visitor. There was a gentle tap at the door, and Mistress Christina glided in. He was surprised and tried to rise and receive her, but she put up her white hand that he should not move. Then she sat down by him, and with the most cajoling tenderness expressed her regret at what had occurred. "Why," said she, "will you trouble about that man whom you know I have discarded? He was there to tempt you, madame. More likely through jealousy, seeing me favor you, perhaps, he suspected me of speaking to you at all hours. But once more, James, trouble not about him. Has he hurt you?" "Nay, madam, not much," says James, "a few bruises that I am to sleep away." "He got as good as he gave, I know." "That is true," said she gravely. "He is much cut about the face, and you have knocked out one of his front teeth. I will knock his head off next time." "I will give you leave to kill him next time," said the lady calmly. "Meantime, prithee get well for my sake. I'll send you something to do you good." She then kissed her hand to him and went softly out. Please stop moving, page. Before she had been long gone, Philip's potion began to work, and James fell into a fine sleep and a violent perspiration. Presently, there was another tap at the door, and as the sleeper did not reply, Chloe entered with a large basin of strong soap, prepared by the white hands of Christina herself. Chloe was followed by the late discarded cat, returning now with lofty tail, sniffing the savory mess. Chloe, finding the patient asleep and perspiring, had the sense not to awaken him, only as she thought it a pity the soup should cool, she put it down by his bedside, calculating that the smell might waken him as it would her. To keep it warm, she put Plutarch's Lives over it, and then retired. It was about 4 o'clock. Now, if James was asleep, Puss was not. He turned about the leg of the table, sniffing, and at last sprang boldly onto the bed, and from the bed to the table. Here he found an obstacle in Plutarch. Plutarch covered the soup, not entirely, but too much for Puss to get a nose in. He sat quiet a few minutes, then he applied his forepaw and nose and made a sufficient aperture. Then he found the soup too hot. Then he sat on the table a whole hour waiting. Then he arose and gradually licked up nearly half the soup. Then he retired quietly and coiled himself up. James still slept on his balmy sleep till just before sunset. Then he was awakened by a violent knocking. He looked up, and there was the poor cat in violent convulsions, springing up to an incredible height and hammering the floor with his head when he came down. James got up, unconscious of his late pains, and threw some water over him. He thought it a fit, but after a few violent convulsions came piteous cries, and the poor creature stretched his limbs and died, foaming at the mouth. James soon discovered the cause in the stolen soup. His blood ran cold. He fell on his knees and thanked God he was alive. But how long? What would not hate so diabolical as this attempt? He seized his knife and prepared to sally forth. At this moment he heard a whistle under his window. Ah, thought he, a signal of assassins. He instantly dragged his bed and other things to the door to impede an attack from that quarter, and then went cautiously to the window. To his great relief, it was Philip who had given that signal. He opened the window directly. "Oh, Philip, they have tried to poison me." "Ah, who?" "Christina herself sent me soup. The cat stole some while I slept. Thanks to your medicine, you are my preserver. And see, the poor cat is dead." He took the cat's body and flung it out. Jesus. Just whips the cat out the door. Philip recoiled with a cry of horror. "Come forth," he cried. "Come forth, or they will murder thee yet. Oh, my love, come forth to me." I will. And in a moment he tore away the bed and other things from the door and ran down to Philip. Philip had lost not a moment, but was getting the 2 best horses out. James helped him. Without a word more, they saddled and bridled them, and Philip sprang into the saddle. His black eyes were gleaming with a strange fire. "Take that dead beast before thee," said he, "and I'll give thee liberty and vengeance." They galloped off over the soft ground, Philip leading, and took the road for Philadelphia. They did not venture to speak till they got clear of McCarthy's premises, but then James told Philip of Christina's visit and cajoleries, followed by murder. Philip said. "'Twas in her eye. Ah, thou foul cat, but I'll be even with thee." And Philip ground his teeth audibly, and his eye shot fire in the moonlight. "My poor James," said he, "that would not harm a mouse." About 5 miles from McCarthy's, they passed his brother's farm. They passed it 100 yards or so, and then Philip drew the rein and haltered his horse to a gate, and made James do the same. "Now take that dead Christina in thy hand," said he, bitterly, "and follow me." He marched up to the farm and asked for William McCarthy. "What want you?" "We are 2 servants of his, come with news of life and death." "You shall find him at supper with the rest." Philip walked boldly into the noisy supper-room, followed by James. "Silence all," said he, with a voice like a clarion, and the room was still in a moment. "Master, have you money in your house?" "Aye," cried McCarthy, half rising and turning pale. "More than I can bear to lose. But 'tis in the safe, boy. None knows of it but my daughter." "Am I your daughter?" "Yet I know it. Your daughter has a mulatto for her lover, and they have planned to rob you of your money and fly." "The proof!" roared McCarthy. "The proof is this. James then overheard Christina and Regulus plan the robbery. He taxed Christina with it, and she tried to cajole him, but, failing in that, and knowing he would tell you, like a faithful servant as he is, she this day essayed to poison him." Here there were some exclamations. "Eh, sir," continued he, "the cat, by God's mercy, stole a little of the soup while he slept. Now look at that cat's body, and judge for yourselves." The cat was instantly examined. Philip did not stop for that. "Now, master, take your weapons, and to horse this moment, and save your goods, if there be yet time." Mr. McCarthy and his brother and 2 or 3 men ran out. Philip turned to the others, and, folding his arms, said boldly, "Sirs, ye are Christian men and white men like ourselves. Is it your will that good servants of your own flesh and blood shall be poisoned like rats?" There was a roar of honest disclamation, and all because Christina McCarthy is so lost to shame as to wed a black and rob her own flesh and blood. "Then, sirs, to your justice we too commend our cause. There is the poisoned beast to prove our words, and half the poisoned soup in this good young man's room over the stable. Punish them with everything short of death. James and I will keep away a little while, for if we testify, the judge might hang her. Give you Goodham." Having delivered this bold but artful speech, he retired with James, and the moment he got outside the door whispered him, "Now run for it, and they will keep us to testify in their courts." Or they will keep us to testify in their courts. They ran off like the wind, untethered their horses, and springing into their saddles, rode rapidly off, keeping the side of the road at first to dull their horses' hoofs. They rode all night, and with the earliest streak of dawn entered the fair town of Philadelphia. McCarthy and his party, 12 in all, caught the mulatto and Christina in the very set of levanting with McCarthy's money. They made short work of them, bound Regulus to a tree and flogged him within an inch of his life, with Christina tied to a chair close by, and the dead cat in her lap. Then they drummed the mulatto out of the district and sent Christina to a farm in Massachusetts to clean pots and pans in the kitchen for a 12-month and a day. Well, that was an interesting unfolding in that chapter. Did not see that Philip was Philippa, but it's a good twist. I like it. And maybe that was chapter 5. Chapter 6 awaits us as the book slowly falls to pieces. Goodbye, bruv. Goodbye.